What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's video, we're going to talk about some of the patterns that God has when it comes to giving you a blessing. Since I would say last night, I feel like God has been showing me that all of the blessings that I have received come with the testimony. I can't just tell you, yeah, I found a house. There's a whole backstory that goes to that. And honestly, I would be doing you a disservice by not sharing that testimony that God gave me. Or even just graduating college debt free. Every blessing that I have has come with some type of a backstory. And God was showing me that in each of these testimonies and in each of these backstories, there is a pattern that is attached to it. So today we're going to be talking about those patterns and what that looks like. And I'm going to be tying in those backstories and those testimonies with each thing to give you an example. Let's get started. So number one, we'll call that not yet. An example of this is when you've been praying to something for God and he doesn't say no, but he says not yet. And you're left with this opportunity to go ahead of him and to do it your own way and to do it anyway, or to take his word that it's going to get done and it's going to get accomplished, just maybe not in the timing that you want it to, which typically is instantly. A recent example that I have with this is, since I was younger, I have always wanted a Lexus car. Always. I didn't think I'd be able to get one until I was probably 45. And last year at the beginning of the year, I just started having this thought of maybe I should just pray about it. So I would pray about it. And there was a few times where I even had a dream that I was driving a Lexus vehicle. But there was nothing in the natural that indicated that this was fixing to happen soon. I don't know what just happened. That this was fixing to happen soon. And as I prayed about it and I talked to God about it, like, is it time? Is it not time? And then he said, not yet. So I was like, okay, don't know. He didn't give me a timeline. I didn't know when or how soon it could happen. He just said, not yet, which was also relieving for me because it wasn't a no. And so then around maybe the very end of December last year, the beginning of January, I just started having this random desire and this random urge to start looking into details of cars. What kind of Lexus would I get? What are some things that I should or shouldn't tell the dealership? Taking the VIN number that I would find on their websites and typing it into Kelley Blue Book to see, like, what are the accident reports? What is the resale value? Is this dealership charging too much for this car? Things like that. All of a sudden, there was a specific day where I was like, God, let's go on a date, right? So I want to do this whole day with God. So I had lunch, and then we went to Home Depot and Lowe's. And as I was leaving Home Depot, I started looking up these cars online to see if maybe there was any local dealerships that I can go look at a Lexus car just to see what I wanted, things like that. And I probably sat in that parking lot for maybe 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes looking at cars. Didn't see any that were in my price range. Didn't see any dealerships that were close. So I was just like, you know what, it's probably just not the right time. So I start heading back to my apartment. And as I'm leaving the Home Depot, it has a median in the center of the street. So it's one of those things where you have to go to the center of the median and turn right to get into the middle turning lane, and then hit a U-turn to go back. So that's what I did. And as I hit the U-turn and I'm heading back down the street, I happen to glance over to my right and I see a few Lexus cars. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I pulled over into this parking lot, and next to it I see Porsche, and then it was like the street, and then it was a parking lot with the Lexus cars. But it wasn't just Lexus cars, it was other cars as well. So I figured that some of these cars were just a lot of these cars were just resales. So I enter the parking lot and I start walking around the parking lot just to see what kind of car I would like. Do I want an NX? Do I want a UX? Things like that. And as I'm looking around, two cars pulled into this parking lot, and both of them were salesmen. The very first one sees me. His name was Jake. And he was like, you know, is there something I could help you with? Keep in mind, I'm looking a little bit bummy this day. Okay, so I was really like, is he actually gonna help me for real? And I said, oh, well, maybe I just have like a few questions, but I'm just looking, blah, blah, blah. So he said, I'll come right back to you and go park this car. He parks the car, he comes back. And he was like, you know, what are you interested in? I was like, I'm not really sure. He's like, well, let's go into the office and like take a look at a few things. And I was like, cool. So I start heading to the Porsche dealership. And as I'm walking that way, he was like, oh, our dealership is actually this way, past these trees. And I was like, I don't see anything. He's like, yeah, you're in the Lexus dealership parking lot. Y'all, I had no idea. I had no idea. Never saw it. I was already standing in the Lexus dealership. Had he not saw me that day, I probably wouldn't even, I don't even know when I would have gone in, honestly. So anyways, we go into the dealership. And he shows me this one car. It was the first car that I saw. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It's everything that I've been wanting. It's sporty. It had black trimming. It was just absolutely perfect to me. But whenever we started looking at the price, I told him what I wanted. And he was like, I'm going to be honest, like, we don't have anything in that range. And I was just like, man, maybe it's just, you know, maybe it's just not time. So I'm talking to God and stuff in like my head, and then he was like, I tell you what, like, you know, bring your car back in and we can look to see like what your current car's value is, the trade-in value. So I bring it in 3 days later, and whenever I come in, the numbers still were not where I wanted them to be. And I was feeling a little bit frustrated. They did bring it down for me just a little bit, but it wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't where I felt like it should be. So I get in my car and I'm feeling a little bit defeated, and I'm like, should I just go ahead and do it or should I not do it? And I'm praying and I'm talking to God about it. And he said, give it 2 weeks. And when he said it, I was like, oh my gosh, I have God's stamp. But then the other side of it, I was like, that feels like a long time away. Like, that feels very far. This car is sitting in this parking lot right now. I could get this car right now. But he said 2 weeks. So I left, y'all, within 2 weeks, right when God said, they were like, we cannot get this car off the lot. They gave me the price that I wanted. And I paid half the interest rate that everyone else was paying. Everything that I waited for showed up better than what I thought I wanted, like what I even asked for. The car that I'm driving right now, I couldn't have asked for a better car. So that's an example of when God says, not yet. The second pattern that I've seen God do is whenever he separates you from what you used to have to bring you into what he has next for you. This is a difficult one. This can happen in different ways. Sometimes God will cause the door to get closed in your face to push you out into a waiting season because he knows that you won't leave by yourself. The other side of it is he can call you out into the unknown and you don't know what's next, but you know that whatever you were just in, that season is over. And an example of this would be when I had graduated college, there was this job that I got hired onto. The manager was very kind. She hired me on. She knew I didn't have a lot of experience, but the position was for an experienced processor. But she was very kind. She said, I'm going to train you during the process to get you caught up to speed. Maybe within a week or two of being at that job, she ends up getting a promotion. And so they bring another manager into her position, and this manager does not know that I don't have experience. So after a little bit, she starts getting frustrated with the fact that I need help. And before I know it, I got that email and they let me go. And I was so frustrated. I was like, what am I gonna do? And I was honestly just freaking out. And then I entered into a waiting season. What I will say about that waiting season, when I look back, is I never missed a bill. I never missed a meal. God provided for me each and every month. And if I knew then what I know now, I would have rested. I would have swam in my pool. I would have laid out in the sun. eaten some fruit, I would have rested, because everything was taken care of in that waiting season. But I was so anxious about what was next. And honestly, I think part of that was the pressure of the people around me. You know, understandably so, but the pressure of the people around me, like, you need to apply for like 60 jobs today, 60 jobs tomorrow. It's pressure when the door is not opening. So I'm sitting in this waiting season and I have no idea when I'm gonna find my next job, because I'm fresh out of college and I hardly have any experience. Like, what am I gonna do? The end of August hit and I get a phone call from this job, my most recent job. I get a phone call. They found my resume online. To this day, I don't know where and I don't know how, because I never applied for that job. But they called me. This job was giving me more money, more benefits, more work-life balance. And then they were also tied, it was a mortgage company, but they were also tied to a builder. So then it also opened up opportunities for me to potentially get a house, which is also what led to the house that I currently live in. When I started this job, it was the beginning of September. And I remember my team lead told me at the time, he was like, you started this job at like literally the most perfect time. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, this is our busiest month of the year. He was like, so I'm gonna be honest, you're not really gonna hear from anybody probably until the end of the month. He was like, so enjoy this, because after this, it's gonna start getting real. For most of that month, y'all, I literally was practically getting paid to just be online. And I was working from home. Then, not to mention, they were giving us as a branch days off, half days, Starbucks. I mean, immediately what I had entered into had made me forget what I was let go of and let go from. God allowed me to be separated and pushed out of the original place. And here's what's also interesting. The place that God had me be pushed out of, turns out I needed that step, because the title that they gave me there is what allowed me to get my next job. It was the title that I needed from that place. That was a situation where God pushed me out of a place that I wanted to stay in, into a waiting season, then allowed me to get another opportunity that I didn't even know that I could get, that I didn't even know that I needed. Number 3, doing something blindly that you don't want to do. I'm just gonna go straight into my example with this, because I feel like it's gonna make more sense. When I was 17 years old, and I was trying to figure out what college I wanted to go to, I had multiple offers to play college basketball. The problem is I have always been an indecisive person. And around this time, I was asking people for their opinions, but none of the opinions seemed to mesh. They all seemed to be different things for different reasons, and I started to feel extremely overwhelmed. I started to feel like my future was on the line, and that I just was not in a headspace to make a rational decision. So I prayed about it. And when I prayed about it, I did not get the answer that I thought I was gonna get. God said, go to the Air Force Academy. I said, oh, I think that was not you. So I'm gonna pray again. So y'all, I literally kept praying again. I'm 17 years old, and I was like, matter of fact, that might have been you, because that's not something I would normally want to do. So can you give me a sign? Every time I asked for a sign, God would provide a sign. And I even would say, God, please give me a sign clear as day, because you know sometimes I might miss it. Help me to see it. I'm gonna give y'all an example of one of the signs that God gave me, okay? First of all, when God said to go to the Air Force Academy, let's just say I was frustrated because I'm 17 years old. I know at that point I'm gonna be 18. I've never left Texas without my family. And now you want me to leave Texas to join the military and go into basic training while all of my friends are going to normal colleges, partying, having cute apartments, and I'm gonna be living in a bunk bed. Like, I literally just remember thinking like, this, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. So I had my last summer of AAU basketball, my last opportunity to get picked up by more colleges. And we were heading to this tournament in Virginia. It was called the Boo Williams tournament. And I had already been to this tournament a year prior. But I'm on the plane and I'm so stressed out because I really don't want to go to the Air Force Academy. And I'm really trying to make sure this is what God's telling me, because I know if he's telling me to do it, it's for a reason, but I don't want to do it. And so as the plane is getting ready to land in Virginia, I'm praying to God in my head and I'm like, Lord, please give me a sign. Let me know that this is what you want me to do, because I don't want to do it. I'm freaking out and I know that my time is starting to run out. I land at the airport. I exit the tunnel that's connected to the plane. As I leave the tunnel, I can't make this up. As I leave the tunnel, and I literally said, God, give me a sign. Let me just say this. I said, God, give me a sign that I can't deny. Okay? As I leave the tunnel, I see a sea, not one or two, a sea of people in military uniform. I said, there's no way. There's no way, because I've already been to this airport. I was just here the year before and I didn't see these people. So now all of a sudden it's flooded. So I go up to my coach and I said, Coach, what branch are these people in? He looks at me, he says, Air Force. Well, I guess I know what I gotta do. So I go into I'm freaking out at this point because God is literally confirming my fear. He is calling me to do something that I don't want to do. In my head, you want me to go to the Air Force? I'm gonna die. You're sending me to a place, you know I'm gonna die. Like, I'm in my 17-year-old brain, that is what I'm thinking. So I get to the restroom, I call my mom. I said, Mom, I gotta commit today. I'm gonna commit today. And she was like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? So I tell her the story, and even she got quiet on the phone. She's like, yeah, you can't really deny that one. And I couldn't, right? So she's like, well, don't make any rash decisions. Like, finish the tournament, see how it goes, and then, you know, figure out if you still want to commit. So I finished the tournament and I waited, but after that, there was nothing else in my heart that felt like needed to be answered. And even when the tournament was over, I remember flying back to Texas, and on the plane I was sitting next to this man, and we both had our headphones on. He didn't look the friendliest. Next thing I know, somehow, some way, I literally don't even know how, we start talking. And he's probably like 45, and I told him about, you know, my dilemma of where I want to go to college and stuff like that. He said, oh, I'm ex-military. He's like, I'm retired Air Force. Then begins to tell me about every reason why I should join the Air Force and not go to the other universities. So every confirmation that I wanted was there. Let's fast forward. We are now a day before basic training day, where I am fixing to get dropped off. And I remember my mom and my aunt were with me, and we were traveling around Denver, and my heart just felt so heavy. My stomach felt like it was in absolute knots. And they're like, you know, where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? And I saw like what looked like a cathedral. I said, that's where I want to go. Like, that's where I got to go. So I remember going into that church, and, you know, we took some pictures, and I was like, I need a second. Like, I need to actually go pray for real. And, oh, made me want to cry just thinking about it. And I remember when I dropped down to my knees in that pew and I started praying, I remember, I don't know why I'm getting emotional. I remember praying from a place of such vulnerability and fear and loneliness, because I knew what I was fixing to do. There was nobody that was going to be able to help me. I'm going to a school where I don't know a person. I've just met some of my teammates. I've just met my coach, but I don't know anybody. I don't have friends. I've never been here before. And I was freaking out. And so I remember I said that prayer, and I just prayed that God would be with me. And I remember my mom dropped me off the next day, and my first day of basic training was just absolutely terrible. I remember my first night laying in bed. They blasted the AC. I had to lay on top of my covers so that whenever I woke up in the morning, it would be in regulations. And so I literally have like my hands between my legs, and I am shaking, like teeth are chattering. I am freezing. And I remember being so angry with myself and being like, you always got to do the hard way. You always got to do stuff difficult. Like, you could be at a normal college right now. Like, you could be in an apartment. You could be eating whatever. Like, I am just so furious with myself. And I was like, I shouldn't have done this. Fast forward, basic training eventually ends. I survive. And September comes around, and around this point, we are getting ready for our first basketball game. I have been doing all of the preseason training. I've been, really trying to work out. There had been multiple times where I was like, do I want to quit this sport today, child? Because I was getting tired. Then I find out that I have a career-ending bone injury. And I was devastated. And once again, I was like, God, like, no, seriously, what's going on? Like, what's actually going on? So that already was a lot for me to go through, because like I just said, I have trained my entire childhood to get my college paid for, just to get put in a situation where they're telling me, you can't stay here anymore, or you can't come here next year because of your bone problem. So eventually they were able to fly me out. I received surgery. They paid for the surgery. They even paid for my mom to go out there as well. And when I came back, I remember just trying to shift my focus into thinking about, okay, maybe the blessing of me coming here was so that my surgery could get paid for. And eventually I just come to accept the fact that I'm gonna have to pay for my college tuition. Like, it is what it is. And I just started accepting it. And around the time that I began accepting it, I started looking at colleges around the country. And I mean, tuition was just so expensive. Like, one of the schools I really wanted to go to was Syracuse. And I was just like, all right, like, I'm just gonna have to, you know what I'm saying? I'm just gonna have to do it. Like, it is what it is. And then one day, a sergeant comes into the room, and they don't really say much except for, I need to go with them. So I go with them. They take me to a conference room that is filled with the faculty in the school that I've all at some point had a conversation with, or they were my professors. Somehow I was connected to them. They're sitting at this long table, and they put me at the head of it. So now I'm freaking out, because no one notified me about this. And when I sit down, they told me, that we talked about my injury, and they said, because you stayed within a certain amount of time, you now qualify for the 9/11 GI Bill. And what that means is, you can pick any public university in Texas, and your tuition will be fully covered. And you will also get a housing allowance every month. When I tell you, I just sat there in shock. They were like, you don't have to finish the school year, like, if you don't want to, like, you you can leave, you know, because at this point I'm still in a wheelchair, getting wheeled around by my friends. I just feel miserable. Like it was a rough time. And I was like, oh my gosh. So eventually I come back to Texas, and y'all, I went to 3 different universities in Texas. I just moved around. I had my entire college tuition paid for, my monthly housing paid for. I was even able to get my first car by myself, no cosigner, and make those monthly payments and have car insurance every month, groceries every month. And here's what's crazier. I thought that that is where the blessing ended. The house that I'm sitting in today, because I went to the Air Force Academy, I was able to qualify for what they call the VA home loan. Because I was able to qualify for that home loan, I have a certain percentage of disability, I didn't have to put any money down on this house. So the decision that I made as a 17-year-old kid is still benefiting me as a 27-year-old woman. 10 years later, from one act of obedience. And I think about that decision, and I think about that process often. You know, what's also interesting is that around that time in college, I was also able to save up money. I was able to also get a part-time job just to add that to my savings as well. And when I say savings, when I say graduating college debt-free, I'll put it to you this way. I was in college at one point in time, and my cousin was living in Hawaii. I was able to go visit her in Hawaii maybe 2 or 3 times in college because of what God had done, because of the decision that He called me to make that I did not want to do. And sometimes I think about what could have happened, what would have happened, what life would have looked like had I gone the other direction. You see, the injury that I had in my hip had always been there. I just didn't know about it. But what was interesting was, as the workouts increased and progressed, that is when it caused the injury to get worse. So it didn't matter what university I was going to go to. This was still going to be the same problem. But God already knew what was going to happen and aligned me with where I needed to be to open the doors that He knew I'd need to have open. Had I gone to another university, they would have cut me. They found out about my injury and about my bone situation before the first game. At a normal university, you are now damaged good. In the surgery that I had to have, they cut into a lot of the muscle that was in my leg. So I lost a lot of muscle and explosiveness in this leg. I needed that. So it's just crazy to think, had I gone to another university, they would have most likely cut me from that team. I don't know if they would have given me or allowed me to have a surgery that was completely paid for. And had they cut me from that team, I actually still would have had to take out student loans to pay for my college. So if you're in a waiting season like I am, I'm waiting for God in multiple different areas. And I feel like one thing that helps me to get through day to day is remembering that I'm currently walking and living in answered prayers. This house was once a dream, a literal dream, a literal vision that God gave me, and I'm sitting in it right now. I'm recording in it right now. He has sustained me in this home. And so what helps me is by recalling God's resume, by recalling what God has done in my life in the past, how even when He's called me to make difficult situations, it didn't make sense. I was always looking to the end of the street and God was looking around the corner. So if you're in a waiting season like me, I pray that this video encouraged you and helped you to know that you are not alone. God may be saying not yet. He may be saying separation from the old into the waiting season while I do something new. Or he just may be calling you to make a decision that doesn't make sense right now. It takes a huge act of faith. And you might be terrified. I just want to remind you and point you back to the Bible and to the feet of Christ. That God has never lost a battle. Never lost a battle. And even in those moments where I felt like I was in storms, even in the moment where I found out that my career was ended, he came through in ways that I never could have even prayed for. When the Bible says that God can do exceedingly and abundantly, let us continue to trust and believe that he will make do on his word. That his word will not return to him void. I pray that this word and this video encourage somebody today. And just remember and know that you are not alone in this. See you next time. Dion, please. I'm trying to do something right.